cryptocurrency space. However, it's not to overlook the diamonds in the rough. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I think what we need to keep our minds sober about is the concept of blockchain. Realistically, anything in crypto that is not linked at the hip to some blockchain innovation, I don't think has the gusto to weather the storm that's sure to test all these technologies and their potential. Now, XRP recently exchanged positions with Ethereum. For those of us who are advocates of XRP, I mean, I'm sure this is good news, and then I know XRP is not without its haters, not without good reason, but all these cryptos on here are up for the test that's surely to come, and I think that this movement with XRP was a good thing, in part due to the connection between XRP and Stellar. I mean, this is, if it's good for XRP, it's good for Stellar, and as we've seen in the past, you know, what happens to one of these, you know, XRP or Stellar, one of them is going to you know, trickle down to the other one. So now, without any further ado, I mean, obviously the market cap took quite a hit. I mean, 182 is not peanuts anymore, but yeah, at the same time, it is definitely something interesting to you know, pay attention to. Now, when you want to talk about, you know, what has been happening involving the greater cryptocurrency community, I think that all the technological variables are certainly in place where we could be seeing some really interesting things as far as XRP goes, and you know, XLM, all these different things I would see as linked at the hip. You know, essentially, when we see mass adoption of cryptocurrency, which is going to happen. I mean, obviously, we have to see multiple variables coming together before this time, but I have faith that the cryptos that have the technology are going to be the ones that live on. So what am I talking? Well, essentially, I want to bring up the point of the dot-com bubble. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you're as old as I am, you'll remember the dot-com bubble and the way the internet functioned before this bubble popped, and how the residual backlash of the way that the public perceived a lot of these different technologies and so forth, there was a dramatic a paradigm shift at that moment, and I really think that it's important to draw a correlation between the events that we saw happen during the dot-com bubble and that sort of thing, and how that's going to affect I mean, that sort of similar thing will happen, and people have talked about this and in comments, and I've seen a lot of reputable and you know, cryptocurrency YouTubers who've talked about these different things. You know, the purge of cryptos, where we'll see you know, obviously it's an interesting world, because what we have right now, the ecosystem and the current ranking and all these different variables, is largely connected in part to the who first come first serve, and really branding and all these different things. Because now, would you say that this is a list of the best cryptocurrencies? I would not be in that argument. I wouldn't say that that Bitcoin's the best cryptocurrency. That's what I'd like to see. Somebody should make a list of the top best cryptocurrencies now, in terms of technology and where we can see them going in the future, and yada yada, all these different variables. But when I talk about Stellar, XLM, and Ripple, and all these things, I know that there's people out there who are just ready to jump on the comment section and start typing away, talking about how there's something about Ripple and XRP and all these Stellar, XLM, that they just in particularly don't favor in comparison to sort of that Satoshi Nakamoto ideal of the traditional decentralized vision of what cryptocurrency could mean in terms of how it would influence the world. I think that it's stressful for people who've aligned themselves so near and dear to this philosophy and want to put their support behind cryptos that are going to try and bring forth a different sort of paradigm shift than the one that we've been used to. The purpose of revolution is changing the names of your masters, and then I guess in the modern day, it's just sort of changing the branding, changing the branding of your masters. So we talk about the banks aligning themselves behind in accordance with XRP, along with a lot of other establishment variables. Now it's pretty plain to see. I mean, we see all these different proponents of XRP who are so faces right on the cover of magazines, from Ellen DeGeneres to Johnny Depp, aligning themselves with the XRP sort of the hype, trying to probably to combat the branding, because Bitcoin right now is so ingrained in the public discourse that for people to even bring up cryptocurrency in conversation, you have to basically break through a wall of the fact that Bitcoin's done such a great job branding itself, and in part that was due to the fact that we've seen Bitcoin worth such heights of value as much as $20,000 not even a full year ago. So it's no question that Bitcoin would get all this hype. Just when you think about consumer mentality, not everybody's genius when it comes to cryptocurrency, and fundamentally I think that consumer psychology is going to play into Ripple's favor when these things really get up and running, and the establishment and all these different variables will start to see companies using cryptos, utilizing blockchain for organization, and once that happens, it'll be impossible to outcompete the companies that are leveraging these technologies that are readily available, and that's going to be I would predict that that's going to be a huge mark of the 21st century. Is basically going to be a determining factor of the various different companies that are proponents of and working intrinsically side by side with the cryptos that are going to be huge variable. So I think the bank knows this. I think the power structure is fundamentally aware that this transition to crypto it has to take place. Digibyte definitely it's connected at the hip in the same similar context. When you talk about the old system and how a lot of these different variables are prone to hacking, and where the case may be. So when we see these different news articles being released, talking about all these different variables, and Verge, XVG, Stellar, Ravencoin, and even all these other less talked about ones, such as the ones that are even further down on the ranking. But as the case may be, I think that it's important to pay attention to how we've been seeing these things culminating. You look where the money is, pro bono, who benefits really. That's the fundamental driving for, which is why I'd always recommend and advocate that you do your own research in this space, and don't let people tell you what your ideas are, you know, and I know I don't need to tell you that, but I think it's worth saying. So this right here, this was an interesting tweet. Stellar, XLM, and Odyssey are available, and visit BitHub website. I mean, that's interesting. This is similar to that Verge, Nascoin, and Ravencoin has successfully revolutionized our concept of time and space. So now trading on the Stellar network. So I mean, there's always things happening in crypto. There's always people making money in crypto, and there's always people losing money in crypto. It's just like anything else, and you could be on either side of it. So, you know, if you're feeling down in the dumps today because, you know, you took a hit, you know, $1 billion, 20 billion, what's a couple billion among friends, you know? For those of us who've been sitting around, you know, this cryptocurrency community long enough, and you know, if you love cryptocurrency, it'll love you back, but love hurts, and it's really days like today and this past week that separate those of us who are in it for the long haul. And you know, she's a tough gal, but you gotta love her gently, you know. But you know, all that being said, you guys, you know, remember, you know, I'm not your dad. You know, this video's for entertainment, educational purposes only, and you know, I hope that maybe you've learned something along the way. But yeah, fundamentally, I'd say, you know, with these developments, and I'd like to see how something like Bitcoin is going to fare up against the competition and the rising tide of the rising tide of all these altcoins